Hello everybody, it's Dr. Dave from Dr. Dave's Best /Biostem Tech. Tonight we have a phenomenal teleconference for you, and the title is Exercise the Panacea for Aging? We actually have about 10 different titles for this. The subtitle, The Recuperative Power of Cardio Boost, sort of tells you what the special is tonight. Tonight's special is indeed Cardio Boost. We'll get to the offer towards the end of this. But this is all kind of standard fare for the teleconferences. We always give you incredible free information, and you have the choice to purchase the product or not. We do, unfortunately, have to do some disclaimers. So let's get to the necessary disclaimers. Pat, next slide, please. Okay, so this is just to remind you that you have to consult everybody but me, your doctor, your local medical societies, the government, foreign governments, you name it. Everybody has more authority than I do about your health, and so please take this for educational purposes only. Never stop or change your medications based on what you hear here. And even with supplements, I recommend that you discuss that with your physician, even though he or she may not know anything about it. Okay, next slide, please. Forward-looking statement. So Dr. Dave's Best is part of Biostem Technologies. It's a wholly owned subsidiary of Biostem Technologies, which is a publicly traded company. And that means that anything that you hear here is not designed to give you any specific advantage on the stock market or to entice you in any way, shape, or form to invest in the company or buy any stocks. So this is, again, fun, educational, informational purposes only. Nothing to diagnose, to mitigate, treat diseases, nothing to suggest that you should buy the stock. Okay, next slide, please. And one of the questions that I get asked repeatedly, and I do mean repeatedly, is what really happens when we change our lifestyle? Is it really worth it? Because we see so many people, and I'm sure you know them, maybe you're one of them, who kind of tries to change their lifestyle, and unfortunately your lifestyle changes you. Everything seems to interfere with your plans. Work, children, spouses, community issues, the house breaks, the kids break, the dishwasher breaks, something breaks, and there's always some demand on your time, and so we tend to forget the most basic things. The most basic things are lifestyle things, and I've covered these extensively way back in 2010 in the book that I wrote with my two co-authors, Mike Fossil and Greta Blackburn, called The Immortality Edge. Subsequently, I presented numerous quote-unquote prescription-type programs for people to write their own anti-aging and regenerative medicine prescriptions. And because of the advent of things like stem cells and telomerase activators and soon-to-come gene therapies, these things have been added to, so the prescription's grown. But it's still based on lifestyle and things like exercise, sleep, nutrition, supplements. Do they work? Well, I think they do, and thousands and thousands or hundreds of thousands of other people think they do. And there are plenty of studies to show that each and every one of these things does in some way, shape, or form affect genetic expression, affect epigenetic expression, affect enzymes, affect cellular behavior, and ultimately seems to affect the ability of a person to perform both athletically and otherwise. So today we're going to focus on exercise, and since I do a lot of presentations on exercise, I'm actually scheduled to present in the fall at some of the anti-aging conferences on the effect of exercise on telomeres. I am intimately familiar with the literature on all aspects of molecular biology and performance. The good news for you tonight, if you're listening, is we're going to be performance-based. And when I bring our special guest on tonight, and I do mean special in every possible way that a human being can be special. So when I bring our special guest on tonight, you will be gratified to hear that we're not going to dive too deeply into science. I'm a clinician by trade, and the individual I'm going to bring on tonight, JC Santana, is also a clinician by trade. His clinic and what he does is exercise, and he helps people achieve their goals. He helps people get healthier. He helps people lose weight. He helps people improve their life. He helps people be the best they can be. So you see all these news sites out there, become the alpha male, be this, be that. JC's been doing this for several decades, and you have the benefit of his experience and mine tonight on this, and I can tell you that any way you want to look at exercise, it is an absolutely essential tool for anti-aging and regenerative medicine. But we're going to show you a little bit more of the hows, a little bit less of the whys, so that you can take something away. And I also promised you some videos. JC has put together some incredible videos at my behest, and I'm eternally grateful for him, and I think you will be too once you see the video link. So stick with us during the whole part of this. We don't want you to miss one iota of the information. Next slide, please. All right, so what should we measure? And you know, JC's going to have somewhat different ideas about this, but I'm going to tell you what I would measure, and then maybe we can circle back to this slide in a few minutes when we bring JC on. There are so many parameters that you can measure, and it does depend on what the person's looking for. Obviously, if a person's looking for weight loss, we're going to measure their body composition and their body weight, and we're going to take a look at how they look. Are they happy with how they look, and how can we change that? Are we going to measure their blood pressure? Are we going to measure their body water content? Are we going to measure their VO2 max and what's called their fat crossover point? All this is going to depend on what they really want. From the anti-aging and regenerative standpoint, from the longevity standpoint, we can measure stem cell function, and we can of course use what I call the BS detector of anti-aging medicine, and that is the telomere. If your telomeres are not at least stabilizing or hopefully getting longer, then you're not doing the right stuff. Now, we also have to sort of define, you know, what is aging and what is successful aging. So let me jump to the next slide, and then I will address that question. So here it is. What is successful aging? Again, ask 10 doctors, you'll get 10 different answers. For me, I really think that successful aging is being able to do everything that you want to do in a pain-free fashion for as long as you possibly can. But I want to point something out to you about the concept of aging and what it is and what it means to people. Most people, when they talk about successful aging, and this is true in the literature about exercise and sleep and nutrition and everything else, are talking about the concept of what we call the Hayflick Limit. So there is this scientist, he's still around, he's in his 80s, Leonard Hayflick, and he advanced the concept of the Hayflick Limit. It was the theoretical longevity of a human being based on how many times the cells could replicate. And it turns out that it should be about 125 years maximum. Now, when you look at what we've got for the longest lived human, the longest lived documented human is Jean Calumet at 122 years. If you believe the Chinese, there's Li Qingyan, who is reportedly somewhere between 200 and 256 years. I think you have to take that with a grain of salt. There's no documentation. It's the kind of thing where people say, yeah, he was 80 when I was 10, and now I'm 90, so he must be 170. There's no question that Li Qingyan lived a long time, and I don't want to negate his work. I don't want to negate the longevity herbs or any of the other things that he purported and that the Chinese believe in so deeply. However, I highly doubt he was anywhere near 250 years old. So the scientifically validated concept here is that we can live to be approximately 125 years. That's one concept of longevity. My concept of longevity is pushing way beyond that with things like gene therapy, telomerase activation, and stem cells. And I believe that with proper supplementation and all the lifestyle things and possibly some medical and genetic interventions, we can push this Hayflick limit a lot longer than that. So when I talk about successful aging, that's my version of it. When most people talk about it, they talk about living to be 85 or 90 in good health and functional. So take your pick, choose your desire, and start focusing on it. But I guarantee you that whether you believe my course of action and what I purport or the general scientific and medical stance on this, you're going to have to do exercise as part of your lifestyle modifications. So let's move on to the next slide. Okay, I want to explain very briefly Salience Principle. Salience Principle, Hans Sale was a German physiologist, I believe, back in the 20s and 30s, who essentially said that a small amount of injury, a small amount of inflammation, a small amount of damage administered in repeated doses with ever-increasing stimulus, in other words, you just lift more weight, run a little further, a little faster, given in a dose that your body can adapt to, your body will adapt to that, and you'll get stronger and faster and have better endurance. And that seems to be something that has stood the test of time. And that is the basic principle of exercise when we try to improve. However, not everybody is trying to improve. Some people are just trying to stay where they're at for as long as possible. So Salience Principle is sort of the principle of improvement, but it may not necessarily apply to you depending on what you're trying to get done. Keep in mind that there are many different ways to exercise, and I'm going to play a little game with JC. He doesn't know it yet, but we're going to play a little word association game, and we're going to see what comes out there. But Salience Principle is the reason why the body can adapt. If it's given a small amount of stimulus or stress, and it has time to adapt, and you're healthy enough to adapt, you will adapt. You will get stronger. You will get faster. You will get better, up to your genetic limit. And essentially what we're describing here is a hormetic response. Hormetic response essentially is the release of enzymes and cellular mechanisms that respond to this stress and cause the adaptive changes that we're looking for in the organism: stronger, faster, bigger, better, smarter, whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. And by the way, exercise has been tied into all of those things, including cognitive performance. So don't forget, exercise may make you smarter, certainly in your later years. The hormonal response is also important because we talk a lot about high-intensity interval training. The most effective way of using HIIT, H-I-I-T, high-intensity interval training, is when your hormone response is intact. And unfortunately, as we age, many of us will experience a decline in our hormonal response that makes HIIT less effective. Not ineffective, but less effective. So you read the studies on the calorie burn of HIIT athletes at 25 versus 55, you're going to get different responses, and you're going to get a different calorie burns, different metabolic rates, different everything. So keep in mind that hormonal responses are very, very critical in establishing not only Salience Principle, but your overall biologic response to stress in general. Okay, next slide, please, Pat. Okay, I think I'm going to introduce my friend JC Santana now, because I think this is getting into his territory for sure, this concept of signs and symptoms of overtraining. So let me just give you a very brief introduction to my dear friend and colleague, Juan Carlos, aka JC Santana. I've known JC for probably about 10 years now, and I can tell you there's nobody on the planet like this individual. There's nobody who understands the human body as well as JC does in the context of exercise and fitness. There's nobody who can get more people of diverse backgrounds, whether they're professional athletes or 90-year-olds, fit better than JC. There's no place on earth like JC's gym, the Institute of Human Performance in Boca Raton, Florida. If you have not been there, it is a mecca. It's like going to a shrine. And I get there 2 to 3 times a year, and I've been doing that for the past 10 years. And the other thing that I have to tell you about JC, which sets him apart from everybody, is he's a leader, not a follower. He's an educated person. He has his master's in this, and he's very, very well-known and world-renowned among exercise physiologists. MDs, PhDs work with this guy. He designs exercise equipment and pads, and he's constantly asking the questions: how can I be better? How can I make you better? And what pioneering things can I do, whether it's fitness equipment or exercise protocols? How can I make myself and you better? So to me, he's a living legend. Everybody, let me bring on JC Santana.
Hey, Doc, how are you doing?
I'm good, JC. How are you?
Thank you so much for the kind words. Heaven knows we've worked very hard to earn half of them. The other half is pure generosity on your part.
No, I wouldn't say that. I'm just telling you what everybody else is telling me. So remember, I get around like you do. And the funny thing I should tell the audience is the very first time that I came to see you, and this is back in 2007, before I actually came to see you, I was doing some research, and I was interested at the time in martial arts training, not so much to become a fighter because I was already way past that, both emotionally and physically, but using the attributes of martial arts. And of course, mixed martial arts had been around for a little while and was gaining in popularity, and like anybody else, I saw the utility of this. And so your name just kept popping up, and I was training with an individual at the time who, for my area, was a very high-level trainer. And I said, you know, I think I'm going to go see this guy. And this individual dropped their clipboard and said, oh my gosh, that's my favorite trainer. So that's how you met Sam Donovan. That's how you met me. And of course,
that's right.
My sister, Kathy. That was many, many years ago. So even then you were famous. So let me have you, can you see the slides okay, JC?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so you know, we're talking about safe versus unsafe and common mistakes. Now, you and I are a library of common mistakes, and I guess I should tell the audience, in this case, do as I say, not as I've done, and I'm suspecting you might echo that, just because you know, experience comes with a price, often heartbreak, disappointment, and a significant amount of pain. So why don't you weigh in on some of these things that are signs and symptoms of overtraining, and maybe throw in a few extra that you've seen or that you deal with on a regular basis, because you deal with so many athletes of all levels, weekend warriors to the highest of the high-level professionals in every single sport, and I've seen them all at your gym, by the way. So.
Yeah, well, you know, I always tell people the main signs of overtraining, all right? And some of them you have them listed here, you know? But the first thing that happens is you're tired and you don't want to go train. So when somebody is not excited about training, I'm kind of already worried, because when you're in your zone, when your hormonal system is working, when you're well rested, you're excited. You have enough energy where you're excited to release some of it. Okay, so the lack of desire, or the reduction in desire to train is the first sign. Then you have what you have here, types of soreness. You have the aches and pains that will not go away, especially those in the joints. Not so much that you can feel in the belly of the muscle, but more towards the distal sides where a joint is, just the tendons and ligaments. So that's the beginning, okay, of a higher level of overtraining. Then, of course, the insomnia, the sleep disruption. That is for certain the beginning of the end, and that's the one that my athletes look at and respect the most. And then after that, if you don't listen to that, in comes the upper respiratory infections. So of course you have here on your slides types of soreness. I don't mind so much a soreness that comes and goes, especially if it's in the middle of a joint, in the middle of two joints, the belly of the muscle. That tells you that maybe you overstressed the muscle, and as you talked about the general adaptation syndrome, if you give the muscle that's sore enough time to recoup, it will recoup and it'll get stronger, not a problem. But when you have that soreness towards the joint that does not go away, that itis, now it's not so much as a little tear or a little eccentric loading that the muscle's complaining about. Now it's inflammation at the joint, and who knows what it could be. So there I'm very concerned, and that normally, especially when you're over 40, can take weeks. I've known of tendinitis cases that have taken 2 years to resolve. 2 years in the Achilles tendon to resolve. I'm one of those guys that I'm now going on 18 months and it's starting to go away. But I've dealt with itises at elbows and at ankles that have taken 2 years, so I'm very, very cautious about that. In terms of injury, non-contact injuries, the same thing. I consider an itis at an elbow, at a shoulder that does not go away, an injury. Why? Because there's a reduction in capacity. It doesn't let you train appropriately. And when you're nursing injuries, you got to go, okay, wait a minute. Is my training not supposed to help my body? Am I not nourishing my body, or am I beating it up? You know, one of the questions that I had of a triathlete that was hell-bent on doing high volume. And actually, I train her tomorrow at 9:30. I said, Catalina, I said, let me ask you this question. Do you want to train so you can take more abuse like the 25-year-olds? Or are you training to actually reduce your time in your triathlons? And she kind of, for the first time, apparently has been asked that, and she kind of stopped and thought about it. And reluctantly, she answered, I want to do better in my triathlon running. I want to do better in my triathlon swimming and biking in my times. I go, then let's train better quality, right, smarter, and less of the proper intensity so we can give your body time to recover. And things have been going wonderful ever since she's accepted that. But I'm telling you, it's a continuous battle. She always wants to do more, although she knows she should be doing less, smarter training. Okay, the excessive weight loss. You know, we're finding this in South America, in Argentina, for example. I have a huge tour, as you know, and often takes me to South America. One of the big things that's exploding in South America is all sorts of running, 5K, 10K, half marathons, and marathons. And people are dropping dead left and right, and they're not sure why. And so what happens, the mechanism that we see is, you know, somebody drops 5 kilos and they're all happy. They drop 10 kilos, and in 6 months they go from running their first 5K to wanting to run half a marathon, and then eventually they want to do a marathon within a year because they have their new life and they have their new weight and their new self-esteem, and they don't understand that dropping 10 kilos is an enormous stress on the body. You know, although your blood work may be looking better, your cholesterol may be dropping, and so on, your blood pressure may be normalizing, you have to see that the body has basically been in a concentration camp dropping weight and overworked because you have been at a calorie deficit now for 6 months. And for somebody who's been sedentary for 30 years, all of a sudden hammering these 6-month training sessions and training volumes, they're doing a lot of damage, and of course it's cardiac related, but they're not sure exactly what's happening. So we're seeing this excessive weight loss, fast weight loss, and increased volume be a real problem, especially in sedentary groups that think that they need this to be healthy. You know,
it's funny you mentioned this. It's especially bad among runners and endurance athletes. There are people who have forgotten why they're running, and they're simply, quote unquote, trying to achieve their mileage. And literally, I see this. It's almost like a depression syndrome. If they don't get their quote unquote mileage in, they're not happy with themselves. They feel that they are not achieving, and completely ignoring how they feel and how they perform, and essentially hitting that last thing, progressing in reverse, where not only are you not making progress, you're doing worse and worse. And it's kind of like a bad manager in a bad company, someone who gets in and is inept and micromanages, and then the company starts having trouble, and the decision is, well, you know what, I'm just going to micromanage more. And then so this person who's running, and is losing ground said, well, I'm just going to run more. So, it's the kiss of death, and I would weigh in on this cardiac syndrome. I'm pretty sure that is protein related, because way back in the day when I was first starting out, there was a liquid protein diet that achieved exactly this. You lose 30 pounds in 3 or 4 months, and they forgot to put in one of the essential amino acids, and people developed a cardiac, basically a heart failure / vascular ischemic syndrome, and were dropping over on this particular product. Which was very highly touted by all the physicians in our area for quite some time. So I'm guessing it's something related to the combination of calorie deficit and poor nutrition, lack of protein, and probably also fat, because people tend to who do endurance exercises especially tend to focus on high carbohydrate diets. There's some issues, you can drop your essential fatty acid levels pretty quickly. So thanks for that, and thanks for sharing your worldwide input on what constitutes safe versus unsafe. Pat, let's move to the next slide, and JC, obviously from here on in, you're pretty much on, so let's see what we got. This is what I call the king of all mistakes, and I refer to the concept of IntRest, or and sort of playing on the bank interest thing, intensity versus rest. So inadequate recovery. Now we're speaking about all athletes here. We're not just speaking about older gentlemen like yourself and I who are growing younger, of course, as we get older chronologically, biologically we're getting younger. But the point that I'm making is that this inadequate recovery, and in the slide it shows a young person. This is not something that just is germane to the 45, 55, 65-year-old athlete or wannabe athlete. This is germane to younger athletes as well. So let's talk a little bit more about inadequate recovery, because this has been a cornerstone of your training principle, especially lately. I've seen you train just about everybody, you know, from hockey, football, MMA, etc. And one of the things you very much stress is adequate recovery, so the person is fresh, mentally engaged, and focused on whatever their contest is. So take it away, JC.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's also a cultural thing, because the new generation, especially with the gadgets, you know, it's nothing for these kids that are 13, 14, 13, you know, to be up 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning texting. And then they're going to school trying to wake up at 8:30. And of course they're dead. They are dead. So it's cultural. And not just these 13 or 14, because the phones and texting didn't just come out. We're on our second generation of this high-tech texting, social media, where they're communicating with different people into 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Also, in the middle of the day, they think that texting is recovery. And I've told my athletes, listen, this is what I need. I need everything turned off. I need darkness. I need a supine position, and I need 3 in, 2 hold, 5 out. Slow breathing. 3 in, 2 hold, 5 out, and I need about 10 cycles of this. I'd rather have 15 minutes of this and play a little game, see how much you can relax and how low you can get your heart rate. Okay? And this is, if you tell your athletes, run a contest, all right? Your personal record. See how slow you can get your heart rate. And the way to do it is get everything dark, because they don't understand that visual input can drive the brain and can drive hormones. So for example, I can show you a video of a rape without sound and stimulate adrenaline. By the same token, I can take away the video and just play audio of somebody getting attacked or whatever and spike your adrenaline. So they don't understand that watching a movie is not recovery. Texting is not recovery. Surfing the net is not recovery. Recovery is recovery. I'd rather have 15 minutes of true recovery than 2 minutes of a movie. So that is huge.
It is huge.
And inadequate recovery, especially at night, they don't understand that the hormonal milieu of night, of random eye movement, sleep, is the thing that triggers all the right hormone things to happen. And without that, repair does not happen.
Well, you know, it's interesting because last month, 1 month ago, we had a fellow by the name of Dr. Michael Bruce, who is known as America's Sleep Doctor. He's been on Dr. Oz multiple times and is quite famous. And he absolutely just said exactly the same thing that you said in terms of overall performance and aging. And so you hit on something that we talk about in the Immortality Edge, and I've talked about in all my presentations, and that is the sympathetic nervous system versus parasympathetic nervous system. And you know, I had a sort of ironic comment in the middle of your talk, what you just finished saying. I was thinking, yeah, I guess that's why they make energy drinks. That's probably the mentality of the average person right now, is you know, let's just drive this system even more. And you can't drive any system without recovery, or it's going to break. So you have to, you and the audience who are listening, you have to ask yourself the very question that JC just put to you a few moments ago. Do you want to get better, or do you want to just fill some nebulous goal like mileage or hours in the gym or something else that somehow has replaced the surrogate? From the standpoint of aging, I want to remind you that there are supplements, there are medicines probably, there are going to be genetic things that you can take and they will achieve a lot for you. But if you don't do these things, if you don't do the lifestyle modifications, if you don't do the proper types of exercise, and we're going to talk about JC's favorites shortly, if you don't do these things, you're shortchanging yourself. You will never get the full benefit. And right now, I'm here to tell you, as somebody who's considered an expert in the field of anti-aging and regenerative medicine, we don't have it wired to the point where there's any one single thing you can do yet, and that includes genetic therapy. That's, jury is still out on that one. We don't have the one magic bullet yet. And ultimately, all of these things in a human system are multiple system and multiple complex. They require the body to get different things: nutrition, relaxation, sleep, as JC just said, and of course the proper types of exercise. So please remember, this is a system. Staying alive and healthy and doing the things successfully as you get older that you want to do is the sum total of all your lifestyle habits, including how you deal with stress and how you deal with recovery. And I got to tell you something, JC, I didn't expect you to say those things, but I'm so glad you did, because you just hit the nail on the head. It's getting worse as far as connectivity is concerned, and our brains and our genes need some time to catch up to that. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we see it in the diet world as well. People don't want to diet because many individuals in today's society are simply addicted to food, and more specifically sugar. That is their heroin, and they don't even know it. But that's maybe another seminar, right? As we say, you cannot exercise a bad diet away, because you can run a marathon and burn 1.5 pounds of fat in one marathon. Okay? And, you know, what is that, 4,000 calories? You make one big mistake at Burger King, and there's your 4,000 calories.
Doesn't take much.
So you cannot undo, all right, a bad diet with exercise. Well, guess what? There's no way you can take anything. I don't care if it's hormones. I don't care if it's testosterone, growth hormone. It doesn't matter. You can't inject anything, all right, that will ward off bad overtraining. Sleep and controlling getting your parasympathetic system strong so it can do the job of the repair is essential. There's nothing you can take that will take the place of good sleep. Sometimes it's better than the gym. Believe it or not, sometimes it's better than exercise. You have a CEO, or you have a high-powered executive who is banging 60-hour weeks, and he's miserable. And he says, man, what I need to do is go to a gym and get fit. No, bro, what you need to do is manage your stress and get some sleep before you even step in the gym. I'd rather you go walking nice and easy and get 8 hours of sleep than take 5.5 hours of sleep and go to the gym every day.
There you go. And you have the decades of experience, and you've, as I said at the beginning, you've trained everybody from, you know, like 5-year-olds to 95-year-olds. So your spectrum of experience transcends pretty much anybody else I know on the planet. And folks, if you're not hearing this, there's not a whole lot we can do for you. Some of you are going to say, well, I'm going to take this supplement, I'm going to take this hormone, I'm going to take these drugs, I'm going to take Dr. Dave's Best fish oil, or in this case cardio boost, and we're going to get to that in a second. All that stuff's going to help you. But I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you that that's the panacea, any more than I'm going to tell you that exercise by itself is a panacea. You just heard it from JC. This is a lifestyle system. It is better to pick all the pieces and do them in a mediocre fashion than it is to do one with great intensity and ignore the others. And me, for example, I'm speaking from experience. Okay, number one, I was on triazidone for the better part of a decade because I trained so hard and I couldn't sleep. I could not sleep. I even went on lithium at one point when I was going through a very traumatic point in my life, and the stress was so high. I was on lithium and still couldn't sleep. So that shows you the power of the sympathetic system. When you're stressed out, they couldn't even knock me out with lithium. I was walking around with lithium when most people would have been asleep for 2 days. Right.
And I finally said, you know what is happening to me? And I kicked everything. I just threw everything away and got back to it, and I've been, you know, sleeping well. And now the training, I don't have to train so hard. because I can just hit it a little bit and my body responds because it's rested.
There you go.
And
and
so
I guess,
I'm talking from experience. And not only that, 2 artificial hips from doing Olympic weightlifting, from doing everything hard, from 300 battles in combat, from, all kinds of stuff. So I'm not speaking from the wisdom aspect of intelligence. I'm speaking from the wisdom that comes through stupidity.
And experience, exactly. Well, I mean, I can echo some of those things as well. Let's get to the next slide, because there is something, or there are many things that you can do. And the goal here tonight is to give people a specific set of things. And let's talk about supplements tonight, JC. Now, you and I have both been using supplements along with all these other things. And again, I don't want to mislead anybody and say that, this is a panacea any more than certain other types of lifestyle changes. The more you pick and choose to do all these things, the better off you're going to do. But right now, and I'm not going to put hormones into this because hormones are banned in most competitive sports. And if you're doing anti-aging and regenerative medicine, then someone is managing your hormones, and hopefully they're getting those things in line for you. But I think we can talk mostly about a couple of specifics, and one is the ergogenics. These are primarily stimulants, and unfortunately, when you see these things, a lot of times you'll read about them in the paper a year or two after they come out, and you'll find out that they've got some version of amphetamine in there. It's kind of crazy how many people who manufacture these things just somehow can't keep those contaminants, which is what they claim they are, out of their supplements. So just be very, very careful with the ergogenics. Right now, the primary ergogenic is caffeine. I think there's a fair amount of evidence to suggest that in low to moderate doses, caffeine actually does improve exercise. And you can read the articles. As a matter of fact, you can read articles on everything we're going to say. If you're really scientifically bent, you can go onto PubMed, P-U-B-M-E-D, and search all this stuff. And you'll find some evidence that caffeine has been reasonably well scientifically tested and vetted out. But like anything else, you can drive it too hard. There's a chemical in your body that you may remember from Dr. Bruce's seminar called adenosine, and adenosine is the thing that generally triggers the other hormonal things that induce sleep, and caffeine is an almost identical mimic for that. So essentially what caffeine does is wake you up a little bit more when you do your thing. Carnosine, not carnitine, but carnosine in high doses, approximately 5 to 10 grams, will generally cause a sort of a histamine and an alanine type of flush that you can get in supplements as well. It gives you a moderate version of a hot flash and helps wake you up, and oftentimes it's combined with caffeine. Creatine has been around forever. Clearly it improves to a mild to moderate degree strength. It certainly improves the body water retention, and you look bigger and better when you're on creatine. So bigger, better, and better is there. Creatine is an inexpensive and very, very useful way. And there's a lot of cool stuff that you can find again on PubMed about creatine and brain chemistry. So as a cellular enhancer, I certainly like creatine. One thing I should tip my hat to that is not on the slide is NAD, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. The precursor of this is niacin. There's a lot of longevity data on niacin, and of course it's been used as an energy supplement for quite some time. And then finally I want to talk to you about Cardio Boost, and we're going to get into the actual individual things that make up Cardio Boost. But Cardio Boost is, the ingredients in Cardio Boost have been shown to increase arginine, and arginine is a vasodilator, and arginine is one of those things that if you do exercise, you'll actually get an arginine flush. Your blood vessels will dilate, you'll flush toxins out of your muscles, and you'll improve recovery. Now here's the secret trick that they don't want you to know. Most supplements that have tested arginine will test it after exercise. So if JC and I go into a gym and we do a pre-exercise arginine level without taking anything, and we do a post-exercise arginine level, it's going to raise by like 1,000 times. That's what happens with exercise. So the secret that they do when they test these supplements is they test them after you exercise, and you're not able to sort out what's happening because of the supplement and what's happening with exercise. The ingredients in Cardio Boost have been tested pre-exercise and independent of exercise, and they will raise this. Now again, I cannot make claims about this particular supplement. I'm talking about the ingredients that we use, and you can go on PubMed and find these things. So vasodilatation, improved vascular blood flow, both of the ingredients, and actually let's get to the next slide, Pat, because this is our special for tonight, and we have an offer on this. Aronia melanocarpa is the black chokeberry, and then we have black raspberry, and these are, again, vasodilators. They're potent antioxidants. And oxidation is the enemy of a young, healthy body. It's certainly the enemy of an old body. And again, we keep things in check. You need some of this stuff to have that general adaptation syndrome or Salience Principle that we talked about earlier. So we're not talking about wiping this response out, but we're talking about is keeping it under control. Believe it or not, there are anti-tumor activities in both of these things. Studies on triathletes have been done looking at the urinary excretion of damaged DNA. So when you overwork your muscles, especially with endurance exercise, this is notoriously common in triathletes and in ultra runners and marathoners. You will find the pieces of your genome in your urine because the cells are damaged and they're destroyed and they're released, and you'll see things like CPK, creatine phosphokinase enzyme, go way up after exercise. You can actually reduce that by using proper supplementation, and the Aronia melanocarpa in particular showed a decrease in triathletes in DNA damage, and not only did it suggest there was less damage due to oxidative protection and less lipid peroxidation, less damage to the fats of the cell, but the suggestion was that it may actually increase DNA repair. So you can look at all these things and you can make judgments on your own, but it's pretty incredible what these ingredients can do. So next slide, please, Pat, and then JC, you and I have a few more things that are going to be a lot of fun to talk about. So here we go, lowest price of the year, 15% off. The coupon code is Dr. Dave's Best. I'm sorry, the coupon code is Cardio. If you order that, you will have 15% taken off at the checkout, and we'll probably only keep this up for tonight. So please take advantage of this if you are an athlete, if you're a wannabe athlete. I should also mention, and again, I can't make any medical claims, but these ingredients are used in places like France and Poland to actually treat vascular problems. Of course, what happens in France and Poland cannot possibly happen in the United States of America because the FDA says it can't. So don't do this to treat any medical issues, okay? Please don't do that. But there's your coupon code, Cardio, 15% off tonight of Cardio Booster. Cardio Booster's been around for a long time, and it's a favorite of our local running clubs here. So take advantage of this. It was designed for this purpose. Okay, next slide, please, Pat. Okay, now these are the videos that JC has created, and please make a copy of this video link so that you can go. These are your free bonus videos. I have watched these, and JC, nobody can put more phenomenal information into 5 minutes than you. One of these is, of course, about recovery, and the other is your personal favorite exercises. So guys and gals, make a note of this link, but don't leave yet because we've got some really cool stuff, and I don't want you to just disappear right now. So we're also going to email this link out, so if you miss it for some reason, don't fear. But these videos are up there for your private viewing since you're on the telecon tonight, and take advantage of JC's incredible experience and his ability to communicate this. I mean, if you've ever begged in your life for something like, okay, just cut through all the BS and give me what I need to know, which, by the way, is my MO on everything. I just want to be spoon-fed. This is spoon-feeding the best stuff, and it will take, between these two videos, it's about 9 minutes. So, JC, I want to personally thank you for doing this. I know you're a super busy guy, and you've really outdid yourself with these.
Oh, my pleasure, man. That's like asking Carlos Santana hey, thank you very much for playing a song,
Right.
That's what he loves to do.
It's
And
like
so,
the
when you say, hey,
what you do,
can you
yeah.
get some information on some videos? Like, are you kidding me? Let's go.
Well, I mean, I think that's the other thing about you that I didn't mention in the run-up is you're a phenomenal educator. And that's what both of us do. We educate. We love to educate people. We love to share our experiences. So let's go to the next slide, Pat. And then, JC, are you cool with a little word association game? I know we didn't talk about that, but I want
Sure, man.
to do that.
I'm up for anything.
So, I know. That's why I knew I could do this. So I want to warn the audience, I've known JC a long time. He's not one to pull punches. And so the word association game essentially is, in just a couple words or less, what comes to mind when I say the following words. So for example, night, you might say day. Pet, you might say dog. Wife, you might say love, or not, whatever. But the point is that you're going to go ahead and what just flies right off your mind. So just a gut reaction. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Squats.
Strength.
Kettlebells.
Swings.
High intensity interval training.
Gas.
Body weight exercise.
Diverse.
Zumba.
Fun.
MMA.
Awesome.
Functional training.
Effective.
CrossFit.
Insane.
Tour de France.
Grueling.
Nutrient timing.
On the money.
Bodybuilding.
Big.
IHP.
My home.
I'd say heaven. Dr. Dave's best.
The best in supplements.
There you go. So thank you for that, and I think the audience got the true character of the man here, and I believe that's actually it for the slides. So Patrick, I guess we can now entertain some questions, and I would ask our audience, because there's two of us, if you want one specific person, myself or Carlos, to answer, please specify the person you want to answer the question. Otherwise, it's a free-for-all between the two of us, and I'm sure we'll both have at it. So, Pat, let's go ahead and solicit the questions. And while he's doing that, JC, you were just in, was it New Orleans you were?
Yes, sir. I was in New Orleans for the annual NSCA, National Strength and Conditioning Association conference.
Okay, and obviously you're a regular at these conferences, and you're a regular presenter at these conferences. And for the audience who doesn't know, this is the absolute most prestigious gathering of people in the exercise world, both trainers, physiologists, researchers, you name it. If you're serious about making contributions to the fitness world, this is the place you go to do it. And JC is literally, I would call you a founding father. I know you're not exactly that, but I mean, you've been there so many times, and they can't get enough of you. So give us just
20. I think I'm up to like 23 consecutive conferences.
There you go. What did you talk about, may I ask?
Believe it or not, body weight training, strength training for the combat athlete. So we didn't have any equipment. It's no equipment, no space, no time, no problems. That was the name of the presentation. So it was Scott Goodpasture and I. Scott Goodpasture was an intern of mine and has owned Cincinnati Functional Fitness for 10.5 years. So one of my things that I do to add to the industry is I bring young and up-and-coming professionals. I've taken Griff Fig, my trainer of 12 years, twice to the NSCA to speak on strength conditioning for swimming. And Scott wanted to go, so I said, hey, you're going with me. So I got him on stage, and he and I knocked out a presentation on body weight training, everything from simple squats to one-arm push-ups to partner carries.
How about it? So he basically showed, and of course, all of those things would be extremely effective for anybody who could, sort of modify those exercises a little bit for home usage. The partner carry can be a lot of fun if you're carrying your spouse, and those kinds of things. So it's another classic example of how you don't need all the fancy equipment. But I should also remind the audience that in terms of fancy equipment, you've got tons of patents. You've worked with numerous fitness equipment companies to develop their lines of fitness equipment, and you're the go-to guy when somebody wants something new and different because of the things that you're pioneering.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, we've had the great luck and fortune of having IHP be the research and development headquarters for, great companies like Ground Zero or Free Motion, as they're now called, Techno Gym, Heart Rate Inc. of the Versa Climber family, Hydrogym, the 360 family, and so on and so forth. So we get to break stuff, basically. And that's our job. When they send in a piece of equipment, they say, well, try to break it. And, I've got real monsters here, and we put a lot of stress on equipment. So I can probably put 10 years worth of work on a piece of equipment in about 1.5 years. So we've put stress fractures on Versa climbers. We've broken 360s at the handles, and then so on and so forth. So they're able to see wear patterns, and we also obviously provide design ideas. Where to put storage for plates, how to change handles, the range of motion, the guidance of a piece of equipment, and so on and so forth. And, of course, programming. We normally do programming for all of these companies.
Yeah. You are, in my industry, we have what's called accelerated degradation studies. You're the accelerated degradation study for exercise.
Of equipment.
Yeah, because
exactly.
If it can survive in your gym, it can survive anywhere. And I've been privy to some of the bits and pieces and parts that have gone flying, and the shavings on the ground, and some of the stuff where you've looked at me and said, why did they do it this way? This is the way they need to do it. And of course, you're on the phone or sending an email to these people.
Yeah, common sense is not so common. So they have engineers that have never worked out designing equipment. So us trainers, we're going like, who designed this?
Right,
this is not the way I would use it. And this is, as soon as you put it on the floor and trainers take 3 or 4 or 5 clients through them of different sizes and different intensities, any trainer will say, I wish it was like this, like that, like this, like this. And that's the feedback that we provide the equipment manufacturers. So we've been fortunate to have the best equipment without having to invest $1 in any of it.
Right. And that's actually one of the reasons why I make sure that I get to your gym. Folks, if you've not been to the IHP in Boca Raton, it's worth the trip. If you've not been to ihpfit.com, JC's website, you definitely need to go there. And you should poke around YouTube, putting my name, Dr. Dave Wojnarowski. You probably have to spell that whole last name. But you will see videos from JC's gym dating back to 2008. You'll see a couple of embarrassing videos where I was a little on the chubby side working out. You'll see some of the people that JC has mentioned, some of his trainers, Griff Fig, Adam Brush have videos up under my name as well, and just phenomenal tons of resources. And this is long before some of these, more recent advents into the fitness world. I won't mention names, but there's a very hot website now that has kind of got the MMA flavor and the gargoyle kettlebells and all this other stuff. And JC's been doing this stuff literally for decades, so I'm not saying anything bad about all the other stuff that's out there, but if you want the tried and true experience, ihpfit.com. And if you want some help with your recovery, don't forget Cardio Boost. One special here, as the slide says, and we'll make sure that everybody who signed up also gets access to JC's videos. So let's see if there's questions. Pat, do we have any questions?
Yeah, we've got a couple. Let's start with Debbie. Debbie says that she's 63 and she's 30 pounds overweight, but she walks, she bikes, she hikes, kettlebells. I mean, there's a whole list of things that she does. It's a lot of things, but she can't seem to lose the fat. What would you suggest that Debbie does?
Well, JC, why don't you have your shot at that, and then I'll throw in my two cents.
Well, being a trainer, the first thing I'm going to ask, and this is what I tell my clients that come in for personal training, and I tell them, look, it's a very unfortunate situation, but I've never seen an overweight person in a concentration camp. Why? Because they're overworked and underfed. Bottom line is, I'm not suggesting that anybody enter that kind of environment, but when you don't eat a whole lot, you are rarely fat. So I give them some nutrition tips. Obviously, we work on frequency, make sure they're eating frequently. We work on quality, and then last, we usually don't have to touch the quantity, because once the frequency and quality get taken care of, a lot of things happen. Everything from insulin and cortisol regulation, which impacts T3 and T4, the thyroid function. It impacts testosterone, because high insulin with high sugar content, that does a couple of things. On men, it suppresses testosterone, and in women,
feminizes men. Yes, exactly.
It goes up. It's opposite, right?
Exactly.
So first thing, I would make sure that Debbie is getting the 5 meals a day that keeps it into a nice caloric, where there's not a huge caloric deficit, but a little bit of a caloric deficit, making sure that she has a high thermic effect of food. She's eating a lot of vegetables and lean meats, and even amino acids from your whey protein, which all are in excess of 15 to 25% thermic effect, which means out of every 100 calories that she takes in, she can burn as much as 35-40% if it's whey. She can burn as much as 20 to 30% if it's, let's say, chicken, and she can burn 15 to 20% if it's broccoli. So out of 100 calories, she can burn 15, 20, 30, up to 40 calories if she's eating the right stuff. So if she's eating the right stuff, she can get a free 1 hour walking workout in terms of caloric expenditure for free. Make sure she's eating right. If she's eating right and she's still stuck, then I would send her to somebody like Dr. Dave to make sure she has blood work. And if really, the poop hits the fan, maybe get an allergy test in terms of food. But first, lifestyle. Debbie has to make sure she's eating 5-6 meals a day. Let's say that she weighs 140 pounds. She's got to be in that 1,600 calorie range, 1,800 calorie range. I would say, let's say 40% carb, 30 and 30% protein. Sometimes I will even go to 40% protein, 30% fat, 30% carbs, and I'll manipulate the macronutrients to make sure she is burning, has the right fats. And that usually gets us a huge, immense improvement. Sometimes people will hit the wall. If they hit the wall, then it's blood work time.
That's phenomenal advice. Being a physician, I tend to be a little bit more test-oriented, and you and I have different metabolisms, JC, and different body structures. I think that everybody has some differences in how they process food and what's the right diet, what's the right meal. It's very, very hard to say. But I will say that independent of race, creed, color, origin, we share about 99.5% of our genome. And most of the essential genes that we have that are related to food processing are similar. There are some changes and some differences, but we're a lot more alike than we are different. So this concept of having a specialized diet is a good one if all else fails, but I think what I've seen most times is if you look at the things that you recommended, you can usually find an issue that is treatable. So from the medical standpoint, obviously I would want to know the thyroid and I would want to know what the adrenals are doing. But let's assume that those are normal, because out of 100 people who come to me or talk about weight loss, I would say maybe one of those people has some type of true hormonal problem. I do think that the so-called sex hormones, which are much more than sex hormones like testosterone, estrogen, etc., play a role in body fat distribution and metabolism. So that's part of the issue. At 63, we would assume that you're postmenopausal. That does make your job a little harder, but it doesn't make it impossible. JC, I know you and I have some disagreements about this, but I'm a big fan of ketogenic diets, and I would refer you to the blog. I've written 14 different entries on that, and for me, the key is always, for me personally, and I think for a lot of people out there, the key is carbohydrate restriction. Now, that doesn't mean that you can eat many, many more calories of fat and protein, but carbohydrate restriction is an effective tool. Whether you want to push it to the ketogenic level or not, that's going to be up to you, but it's something that I've seen work over and over and over again, and the recurrent popularity of the Atkins diet, which comes and goes, is part and parcel of that. Again, sleep is also important. If you believe, well, Well, let me go back to something like measurements. I have a device called the Body Gem that measures end-expired CO2, and it tells you what your metabolic rate is. So, you know, sometimes looking at height and weight, you might say, well, my metabolic rate should be 2,000 calories a day, resting metabolic rate, and maybe it's only 1,400 or 1,500. But I will tell you that I've compared this value numerous times to that on a simple Tanita Ironman scale, and there are many more inexpensive versions of that scale out there. But this thing calculates your metabolic rate based on your body fat and your weight and your body water, and it's within 100 calories of the Body Gem. So if there's questions about how much you really can eat, that's a great way to get a measurement for that. And then finally, if you need supplemental help, I make something called Ultra Strength Fat Furnace. It's helped a lot of people get started. Again, it's not a panacea. You still have to do all the things. But what I find, and JC, I don't know how you feel about this, but the biggest impairment to weight loss that I find is lack of progress. People treat everything like it's a text or an energy drink or a soundbite. It's got to happen immediately. We have to be available immediately, and I want to lose weight immediately. And if I fast for a day, I should lose weight. And that's not really how that happens. The body, if you're going to bother fasting or you're going to reduce your calories, you actually have to do that for 3 to 4 days to get really the metabolic shifts, the body water shifts, and the hormonal shifts that happen. It takes time, and I'll use ketosis as an example. It takes me 3 to 4 days of about 300 to 500 calories a day to actually get into full-blown nutritional ketosis. Starvation ketosis takes a lot longer, and I certainly wouldn't recommend that. But the actual fat adaptation, so let's say I want to go out and run an ultra run, and I don't want to have to depend on food, so I'm going to be out there for 18 to 24 hours. I've got to be keto adapted, and that takes a couple months. So this issue of weight loss, the way JC put it to you, it's going to take some time. If you're more aggressive about it, it'll happen faster, but none of this happens overnight. So you cannot get impatient with your body. Set feeling good, looking good, and feeling fit as your goal, and do what we tell you to do. Find the thing that works for you best nutritionally, and as JC said, you can't exercise away a bad diet, and I have to suspect that may be what's going on. Patrick notes that Debbie is intermittent fasting. I think intermittent fasting is a great idea for health benefits, but it's obviously not enough to actually help you with your weight issues. So you may be using the wrong tool for the wrong outcome. So that's have we beaten that one to death, JC? What do you think?
Absolutely.
Okay, next question.
Just to follow up to what you were just talking about, Todd wants to know if the ketogenic diet is a good solution if you're doing endurance training instead of trying to lose weight.
Well, let me, again, I want to, and I'll let you have a crack at this, JC, because I know you have very different ideas about this than I do, and you've had very different experiences. But for me, a ketogenic diet is really the only way that I can get lean and fit. And I'll share with you an experience that I had a while back. This actually took place in JC's gym. The trainer's name was Connie Soul. She's a pose coach. So pose is a specific method of running, which has been copied by many people, like chi running and that kind of stuff. But Romanoff was the original sort of gravity-fed runner. So at the time that I was tested with something called a metabolic crossover and a VO2 max, I wasn't doing a whole lot of running. I wasn't in great aerobic shape. I was very fit strength-wise, and I had done some circuit training, and I looked great, but I wasn't out running miles and miles and miles, and I wasn't on the bike for miles. I was probably running maybe 10 miles a week or less, so I was in pretty average shape. And I was with a friend of mine who was more a bodybuilding weightlifting type. And we both did this metabolic crossover testing in VO2 max. And our VO2 maxes were not a whole lot different. Mine was pretty much a high average for age. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great. And of course, VO2 max, for me, I've had much higher VO2 maxes. They are trainable within genetic limits. But what was most impressive, and it outlines the difference, is on this particular ketogenic diet, I didn't cross over from fat burning until I hit 92% of my maximum heart rate, which means that I would not get into that situation of lactic, well, I'm going to piss JC off, of hydrogen ion buildup where my muscles were burning and getting fatigued because I had not crossed over into that glycolytic pathway, that using sugar as a last resort to fuel my muscles. I could take that to 92% of my heart rate. My friend crossed over at 72% and gassed out a lot sooner. So for an endurance training person, I would say it's a mixed bag. I think being keto adapted takes 2 to 3 months. I would certainly read The Keto Adapted Athlete. It's a wonderful book for someone who wants to do that. But there's something else you should understand about ketogenic diets, and that is that you're going to be contending with some fatigue. It's not going to stop you, but it is really, really annoying. Fatigue, especially for an endurance athlete, is a really annoying thing, and we deal with plenty of it just by the nature of the beast. And there are many people who just simply feel physically much better with some carbohydrates. I think there is an intermediate thing. I'm not here to plug somebody else's supplements. I'm here to plug my own, so buy Cardio Boost. But by the same token, if you look at Generation UCAN, U as in U, not Y-O-U, but the letter U, and C-A-N, CAN, is a waxy maize-derived carbohydrate that has a very slow absorption, slow insulin spike, and it may be the answer for those of you who want to try to stay in ketosis, but also need those carbohydrates to feel good. I was never actually able to stay in ketosis with it, but apparently some people can. So it's kind of the intermediate answer. If you don't want to bomb yourself with carbohydrates and sugar and goo and gels and all that other stuff, and you want to try to get to that point where purportedly you could literally run for 24 hours and not eat anything, just drink water, not even need Gatorade because you're so keto adapted that your body burns fat, then that's going to require you to take a couple months to train and get used to the fatigue issues, and maybe you want to try a Generation UCAN. JC, fire away, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, I've taken ketogenic diets for a run, and the big thing that surprised me is I figured that if I stayed away from carbohydrate, that I would automatically land in ketosis, and I spent 3 days with very little, almost nothing in terms of carbs, and I couldn't get into ketosis, and it turned out I was doing too much protein, and the body can deaminize the protein, take the nitrogen away, and boom, turn it into glucose.
Yeah.
And as soon as I started,
that's a great point.
Dipping my meatballs into olive oil, so I was consuming like a cup of olive oil a day by dipping meatballs into the olive oil and eating it that way, really soaking. And immediately, I mean, it was immediately I went into ketosis. I didn't think I could go through my SAQ camp, which is in the summer at 3:30 in the afternoon, which is hot, 3:30 to 4:30, and I went through it just fine in ketosis. So, I kind of beat that fatigue. Now, granted, I wasn't running for 5, 6, or 10 hours, but for an hour doing speed, agility, quickness, I had no problems finishing an hour of that type of training. My only problem was that the biggest kidney stone I ever created, which was 8 millimeter, and then they had to push that back and blow it up through lithotripsy. Was after that ketogenic diet. So that was, I just tried it for a test run. I didn't find any problems with the endurance. I did get leaner. But what I found was that it's very hard to keep up. It's not realistic, and it's not the way I like to eat, because I love my broccoli and my cauliflower and my greens and my beans and my peppers and all that stuff. So what I found is that you can't go wrong from a performance and aesthetic standpoint. You can't go wrong with lean meats, vegetables, and berries as a general rule. You can sprinkle in some nuts, you can sprinkle in some beans, you can sprinkle in some sweet potatoes and those types of healthy carbs, but you can't go wrong with, let's say, chicken or fish, vegetables, and berries. Of course, with a cardio booster, I definitely would do your fish oils, which I've been on for some 10 years, best fish oils on the planet, and that keeps you, man, that keeps you going like a rocket,
Yep. Yes, I I have to agree with you on that one, and it just you made me realize I've been remiss in reminding the audience about, one of the uses for cardio booster is you can mix it in with your smoothies. You know, if you don't have berries, or you want to just double the berry power, so to speak, you know, mix it in there, and now you've got a supercharged smoothie from the cardio booster. That's just a reminder. Just 2 more seconds on the ketogenic diet. I think that the nuts and bolts of this is the human body has incredible ability to adapt. You can burn fat by consuming fat. I think to be truly a high-fat diet, and this is something that drives me nuts in the literature, a high-fat diet is a minimum of 60% fat. So when I read these, we put mice on a high-fat diet of 35% fat, and that's a high carbohydrate diet still. Okay, you know, 60 to 70% fat, that's a high-fat diet. And JC's absolutely right. You have to limit your protein to a degree, otherwise you can get what's called gluconeogenesis. It will make sugar from the protein. And so you limit your carbs extremely tightly, you limit your proteins a little bit less, and then you eat a very high-fat diet. The other thing that you can do and should do after you spend a week or two in a ketogenic diet, start adding in those vegetables. There's no harm there. It's very hard to eat more than, I mean, the limiting factor here is about 50 grams of carbs for most people. 50 grams of carbohydrates from broccoli is about a bucketful. I mean, it's pretty hard. If you ate that much broccoli, you still probably wouldn't hit 50 grams of carbs, and you'd just be so full that you wouldn't want to eat for the rest of the day anyway. You'd go into ketosis from being starved, more or less. So I think again, I don't want to make this about diets, but as JC said, you cannot exercise a bad diet away. There are books out there on raw food people, vegan, vegetarian people, keto adapted people. So everybody's making everything work. Find what works for you diet-wise. Make sure you supplement during your diets, because again, you're going to have holes. And you know, Cardio Booster, fish oil, Monster Multi, these are phenomenal supplementations. Again, if you have a weight problem, you might want to look at Ultra Strength Fat Furnace. Pat, other questions?
Yeah, Joanne wants to know, if you were to do only exercises for 5 minutes a day, something you consider, you know, the most critical, what would you guys each decide to do with those 5 minutes?
Oh man, JC, I'm going to let you have that one, and I just want to intimate one thing. There is a device out there that's been sold for many years now. It looks kind of like a bicycle with a bunch of appendages on it, and they claim that you can get fit in only 4 minutes a day with this $4,000 or $5,000 piece of exercise equipment. So sooner or later somebody's going to ask that question. So I'm going to leave that one up to you, JC. What would you do in 5 minutes?
I'll tell you what. If I didn't have equipment, sprinting. You know, it takes you about 1:10, anywhere between a minute and 1:10 to do a 300-yard shuttle. So assume you do a 300-yard shuttle. Let's say it takes you a minute, so we can do quick math. Minute. You rest 2. That's 3. All right. So that means I would get another one. I would get 2 300-yard shuttles done in 5 minutes, and that includes rest periods. If I had to do one, okay. If I had to do one. If you have to do 5 minutes, there's also a study that came out about 11 different exercises where you do them for 30 seconds on with 15-second rest. Mm-hmm. And you can do that. I mean, you know, a series of course, squats, push-ups, sit-ups, dips, and so on and so forth. So you can do a circuit like that. But if I just had, you know, out in the jungle and I didn't want into like the exercise and aesthetic and this and that, I would be sprinting. If worst came to worst, sprinting. That's it.
Yep. Perfect. My answer would be go to your local park, find a park horse, and do that for 5 minutes. Sprint from station to station, and do 30 seconds of each exercise. Because, for instance, the local park horse that we have has got rings, pull-up bars, push-up bars, dip bars, incline sit-ups. You can knock those things out very, very quickly and sprint in between those things. And again, it's not an ideal situation, but I want to just share one experience with the audience. Probably when I was in my mid-30s, which is, you know, over 25 years ago, I was very frustrated with my inability to exercise on a regular basis. And so what I did was I promised myself that for 30 days I would only do 5 minutes of exercise every day. And if I couldn't do 5 minutes every day for 30 days, I was the most pathetic excuse for a human being on the planet. Now, something very interesting happened. First of all, it was harder than you might think to force yourself to do 5 minutes every day, because you could always think of something else you should be doing. And I was very, very deeply involved in my clinical practice at the time, so I was being tugged on from every direction. But I got those 5 minutes in for 1 month. And by the second or third week, I was dying to work out for 30 or 40 minutes. And I didn't. I forced myself 5 minutes a day. And on that 31st day, let me tell you, I went into the gym for an hour and I had the best time of my life. And I have never looked back. So that cured me of the concept of not being able to find time for exercise. So I just thought that was an interesting little vignette to share with you guys out there of how 5 minutes could be one of the best things you ever do. Remember, you've got to exercise to stay young and healthy, to have your peak performance both physically and mentally. Exercise will help you sleep. It will help your sexual stamina. It will help your performance, your cognitive performance. I could go on and on and on down the list. But the other thing I would suggest that you do, the person who asked that, is go watch JC's video on his favorite exercises, because you can do those in 5 minutes too. So one day you could do JC's favorites in 5 minutes, and then go ahead and create your own park course in your backyard or your neighborhood. And just be a little inventive. I love gadgets. I've got tons of them. Most of them have come from JC's gym. So, but by the same token, you don't need that to be fit. Pat, any other questions?
Yeah, Todd wants to know what's the dosage and timing of cardio boost that he should be using. I mean, he's still talking about endurance exercise, but do you have opinions on the dosage and timing, Doc?
I do. I would say take the dose. I would use 2 doses a day of 2 capsules for your specific exercises. On days that you're not exercising, 2 capsules is plenty. On days that you are, I would take your pre-exercise dose 30 to 60 minutes prior to your exercise, and then I would take a post-exercise dose approximately 6 hours later. So morning and evening is not a bad way to do this, depending on when you work out. And if you work out late at night, just take the pre-workout dose and then take the post-workout dose in the morning. So a little bit of separation is good, and you want to try to maximize that recovery. And it does certainly, it is a favor of endurance athletes. I won't lie to you, the utility of cardio boost for strength training is really only for those people who are really busting their chops, who are really hitting the super high intensities. The average person who goes to the gym and lifts weights 45 minutes 3 or 4 times a week is going to be helped by this, but not to the same degree that somebody who's really, really hitting it hard, or going to JC's gym 2 or 3 times a week, or doing the high level endurance training. There is a place for this. It will help everybody, in my opinion, but it is really most beneficial for the person who's hitting it pretty hard, or who is so out of shape that they're trying to get in shape to hit it hard. Other questions, Pat?
Yeah, we've got one here from Dave, who wants to go back to the diet, but he's asking about eating 6 small meals a day versus eating smaller meals and a large dinner. Where do you guys sit on that?
JC, you want to hit that one?
I like frequency. I mean, we can get into the science, and it's kind of up in the air. The last time I checked, is it better to eat 1 bolus versus 5 equal boluses? There's a lot of research to indicate that, for example, mice will do better off with 5 small boluses if you control the total caloric intake versus 1 bolus. Bottom line is, I try to understand the science, but go to practicality. And I like small meals. Now, does intermittent fasting work from a health perspective and longevity? Yes, it does. Okay, and if that's your style, fantastic. I know people who are on that. They do 1 shake in the morning, and then they don't eat at all till nighttime. I know some people whose their first meal is at 4 o'clock. They do the shake then. Then they do a late dinner at night. 9, not my particular style. I like frequency, small meals throughout the day that kind of keeps you more hormonally balanced, in my opinion.
So essentially, it's similar to my dear friend Barry Sears' zone diet. Small, frequent meals, manage insulin, and keep the calories away from bolus. You know, I do things differently. I do more things in that sort of tight window of eating between, you know, 11 a.m. and 5 or 6. But we share a common thing, and that is neither of us like big boluses. I think just to look at cardiac disease, okay, I personally believe we could reduce cardiac disease by 50% if we got rid of bolus eating. We got rid of the buffet molesters, you know, all you can eat buffets and people who just go and eat 2,000 calories at a sitting. It's very clear that these high caloric bolus feedings are just really bad for you. And that's not the way our bodies are designed to eat. So whether you do it JC style or whether you do more of a window type eating where you fast for 18 hours and then eat in between the 6 hours, however you do it, you're at least exercising that issue of not eating gigantic boluses. Really, really bad. The other thing that I would recommend people do to deal with cardiac disease is keep their omega-3 levels up. If we could get people to eat smaller meals, and maybe more frequently, or maybe not more frequently, but smaller meals, reduced calories, because obviously most of us overeat, and then keep those omega-3 levels up, in my opinion, from everything I've read, we wouldn't be dealing with nearly the epidemic of cardiac disease that we are now. So that's my take on that. Other questions, Pat?
Yeah, Carla was wondering that earlier you mentioned that recovery isn't watching a movie. What can she do to focus her recovery efforts? Meditation, something else?
You know, a lot of people get weird with the word meditation, and I'm particularly one. I'm not afraid of it, but I just don't like it a whole lot because it gives you this weird, you know, thing that people think that that's meditation. Look, meditation is anything that chills you out. So, for example, if you sit by the ocean and watch the waves come in, that could be meditation. So let's understand what I mean by meditation. I think if you just sit down and for 5 minutes, okay, breathe in for 3, hold for 2, and out for 5, okay, and get your heart rate, get on a heart rate monitor and see for 5 minutes how low you can get your heart rate with that type of breathing. Just control your breathing and do that. That, for me, is awesome recovery. And I sell it to my athletes by, you want an injection of testosterone? Do this. And all my guys will do it. And most of them will take a nap. If you tell them to take a nap, absolutely not. They won't do it. But if you tell them that you're going to help them regenerate their body and get a hormonal spike, increase testosterone, especially after training, they will all do it. So I can get all my big guys, all my big bad guys to breathe and chill because they think they're going to get big and bad that way. You know, I think it's a big stretch in terms of getting big and bad, but I know it does them good. It calms them down. They're not near a phone, and most of them end up taking a nap. So that's how powerful that is. But you got to sell it right. So I sell it as a testosterone booster.
Well, you know, it's funny you mention that because I'm actually involved with an individual who is working on developing natural testosterone solutions, non-supplement, non-drug. And there's actually something to breathing patterns and improving hormonal balance. And I think that you hit the nail on the head with the whole, I mean, what I love about what you said is it's easy to do. It's very, very simple, you know. Breathe in for 3, hold for 2, breathe out for 5. I mean, how much more simple could that be? And you can actually monitor it. You can measure the effects by watching your heart rate drop. So to me, that fills everything any scientist, doctor, or clinician would ever want as far as, you know, a clinical trial. So I love it. Pat, if we have time for one more question, and I think we're going to wrap it up. We've been going at this for close to an hour and a half. So if there is one more question, we'll take it, and then we'll call it quits.
Sure.
Fire away, Pat.
So you guys mentioned caffeine earlier to improve workouts. Is there a correct dosage of that, an incorrect dosage?
Well, yeah, JC, you can have a crack at that too, but here's the problem. Most of us are way over caffeinated. There's tons of caffeine in everything. If you drink any energy drinks, likelihood is there's some form of caffeine. It may be disguised as a guarana or theobromine or some other analog, and they may claim that it's different, but these are all adenosine mimics, and they all have the same effect. So the dosage that was studied, I believe, was 100 milligrams, which is one sort of moderately strong cup of coffee, 2 Mountain Dews, something like that. Not that I would advocate Mountain Dew, but I'm just giving you a general, or probably 1 no-dose. I don't remember what the doses of no-dose is from medical school, but I'm guessing that. The problem is that most people have a long-term experience with caffeine, and so they may not get any kind of buzz from 100 milligrams, and if they have no experience with caffeine, then that may be almost too much for them. So most people, it's the other way. 100 milligrams is not even going to wake them up because they've already had 200 or 300 milligrams of their coffee in the morning. They've got strong cups, 16-ounce cups, whatever, energy drinks. So again, it's under the context of someone who's not abusing anything that you put in your body from the outside that has an effect on your body, and many things that actually don't, will cause a phenomenon called adaptation and habituations, and caffeine is no exception. When you take something, for it to work, in most cases, it's got to do something to cellular receptors. So it's got to go somewhere in your body. It's got to find the cells that respond to it. It's got to glom onto those cells. It's got to attach to those receptors. And then it's got to turn a lock and key and make something happen. When you provide it exogenously, and testosterone, estrogen, these kinds of things, these are classic examples. Caffeine is another. When you provide it from the outside of the body exogenously, your body will actually down-regulate those receptors. It will try to return what's called homeostasis. This is a principle of life. The body's always trying to regulate things in a narrow range, and it will try to regulate the number of receptors based on how much you have. So after a while, 100 milligrams may not do it to you if you use it every day or 2 times a day, and then you're going to want 200, and then that'll work, and then you'll continuously down-regulate, and eventually you'll actually get to the point where caffeine no longer works, or it actually makes you sleepy, which is sort of crazy, but you'll get an inverse response, and that's because there's nothing left. You've pushed everything to the point where it is no longer going to respond to that. And you have a choice. You can sleep for a couple days, maybe experience some caffeine withdrawal, or you can do what unfortunately some people do, and that is go on to stronger stimulants, which is absolutely a stupid thing to do. Don't do that. So,
yeah, we've seen as much as 300 mgs work, between 200 and 300 milligrams. But like Doc says, there's number one, there's a dose response. So if you're the type of person that has a cup of coffee every morning, 100 mgs is not even going to touch you. Right. So in that situation, you go to 200 to 300. For example, today had a hard go at it, and I had an entire espresso colada, which is Cuban coffee, between my son and I. No problems. I mean, it just jacked me up. I don't do that every day. If I was to do that every day, inside of 2 weeks, I could drink one of those things and nothing happens. And if you keep pounding it, now you go to 2, then you can have the reverse response. So I would say that those large doses of caffeine should be used very sparingly. Not for every workout. Not for every workout. Now, if you have one big workout every 2 weeks, you're setting personal records, and you want to get amped up, okay, one time, and you will get a nice buzz. If you're a regular coffee drinker, and I'm not talking about an enormous amount, you just have your cup in the morning, you get 200 milligrams to 300 milligrams, and you will squat more, you will run more, you will work out more. But you can't be doing that 3-4 times a week, because you're just going to beat up your adrenals,
Sure. Sure, and again, remember cardio boost. Most people are polypharmaceutical. They want to do everything they can do. So, here's a perfect combination for you: creatine, cardio boost, and caffeine. If you really, really want to. But again, the point about caffeine is what JC said, and what I said about habituation. The other thing you got to remember is caffeine has at least 2-pass metabolism, and the half-life is 12 hours. And so I'll get people coming in and saying, Doc, I don't get it. I'm waking up at 3 or 4 in the morning and I'm jittery and I can't go back to sleep. And I'll say, well, what's your caffeine habit? Well, I have a cup of coffee at, 8 or 9 o'clock at night. It doesn't do anything to me. I can go right to sleep. Well, that may be true because of absorption issues. But 12 hours later, that caffeine is still in your system. And the way you can tell that you're caffeine addicted is whether or not you feel withdrawn. So if you go to sleep and you use caffeine late at night, again, this is germane to workouts. Don't use caffeine late at night to work out late at night. Working out late at night, for most people, will wake them up anyway. But if you take a dose of caffeine, say at 9 or 10 o'clock at night to do your workout, and then you wake up in the morning and you're jumping out of bed, feeling refreshed, and then like 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning you're exhausted, that's probably to do with the half-life of caffeine. You're probably caffeine addicted, and you're just not hitting your times properly, because theoretically speaking you shouldn't consume caffeine after 4 p.m. Or it will affect your sleep negatively. And I can't tell you how many people have said, that stuff don't affect me at all, Doc. That doesn't do, the SHIT word. And unfortunately, that's what they're full of, because it is affecting them. They're just not recognizing the pharmacokinetics of caffeine. So, again, a little sideline here, but it's important because we want you to be healthy, and we want you to work out effectively, and not violate JC and my principles of recovery. If you're not sleeping, you're not recovering. If you're caffeine addicted, you're not recovering. Your sympathetic system is being pushed, your adrenals are being pushed, and you're going to crumble. You're going to progress in reverse. You're going to age.
Yeah, if you're tired because you're not recovering, caffeine or any drink that has taurine or anything that's going to stimulate you at 4 or 5 because you're already dragging butt and you want a good workout because you feel tired and you want more energy, you have to understand you're doing the opposite. So here you are tired because you're not recovering, you're not getting quality rest, you're not managing your stress, and you think a hard workout is going to put you to sleep. So you take a stimulant at 5 o'clock after you get out of work so you can have a hard workout to try to put you to sleep. That stimulant is still in your body. So you may pass out at 11, but at 1 or 2 you're going to be zipping up, and you're not going to go into random eye movement sleep. You're not going to be going into that deep REM sleep that you need for repair. It's just you're circling the toilet when you have to do stimulants. When you have to do stimulants to get a hard workout, you're already circling the toilet. That's your first time.
You're right, and the other thing I want to point out is, again, you're addicted when if you wake up to pass your water. Okay, now caffeine is a diuretic, so it's going to make you pee. If you wake up at 2 or 3 to pass your water and then you can't fall asleep until 6 or 7 o'clock the next morning, guess what? Your problem is probably caffeine. Again, I'm looking at 100 people. 1 of them will have a thyroid problem, and 10 of them will have anxiety. But the other 80 will have a caffeine addiction issue. So it's got to be dealt with if you want to have effective ergogenesis from it. In other words, if you want it to actually work as a stimulant, it has to be best used intermittently and the lowest possible dose that you need to get the results that you want. So we've been at this now for an hour and a half, JC. The good news is over half the people who were originally on are still on, so hopefully we're giving them value. I also want to remind everybody about Cardio Boost on special tonight. Take advantage of that. You've heard about all the wonderful things that the ingredients in Cardio Boost can do. You've heard JC and I talk about it as well as other things. And the videos, anybody who's signed up will get the video links that JC has provided as a free add-on to this teleseminar. So hopefully we've given you lots of value, and I want to remind you folks that everything I do for myself, and I'm happy to share it with you. I'm my own guinea pig, so you don't have to be. And JC, I would say you fall into that category as well. We the wisdom that comes from experience and, as you mentioned, sometimes stupidity. So do as we say, not as we do. But we will continue to push the envelope, the two of us. I will continue to visit JC's gym in Boca Raton. I will encourage you to visit his website, ihpfit.com. For those of you you who are trainers, you should become part of IHP University. It's a phenomenal resource, and you know, I've seen what JC has done to educate, and even if you're not a trainer, you might want to become part of it, just because of the type of information that you can take for your own usage. We set these examples for our family and our friends and the people we love. Let's set good examples. Let's live very long. Let's live very healthy, and let's have a blast doing it. And JC, it's been a blast having you on tonight. Thank you so much. Let's do this again soon, okay?
You got it, my brother. Anytime. I'll go anywhere with you, man.
All right, well, thank you. It's Dr. Dave. I'm going to say goodnight with one final reminder. Many people have emailed me about Dr. Bruce, our last guest, JC, our current guest. We're going to have other guests. I think we're going to have Bill Andrews, a telomere expert, on soon. We're going to continue to bring in guests as well as just listening to me. But those of you who wanted to know about Dr. Bruce's seminar, it's called the Sleep Success Summit. You go to sleepsuccesssummit.com, sign up for that. And again, those of you who want to know how to do the exercises properly, who want to be on the cutting edge of exercise and fitness as it applies to your well-being, stay tuned to Dr. Dave's Best and make sure you visit ihpfit.com. JC and I can be your best friends and your best resources in this topic. So thank you very much, all of you, for being on tonight. Please take advantage of our special. Help me do what I do so I can help you do what you need to. Thanks so much. It's been really, really wonderful. We'll see you soon on the next one. Good night.